You ever look at a chart or a graph and just see, a bunch of lines and dots? Well, what if I told you that every single one of them is actually a story? A story that's packed with drama, plot twists, and even a grand finale. Today, we're going to learn how to read them. We're learning their secret language.
Okay, let's just dive right in with an example. Take a look at this graph. Now, at first glance, yeah, it's just a curve on a grid. But it's telling us something. It's telling us that on day 0, we started with a whole bunch of some substance. But by day 20, poof, it's almost all gone. See, this isn't just data. It's a story of disappearance. It's a story of decay.
And that's the big question, right? How do we go from just seeing a line to actually understanding the story it's telling us? Well, to do that, we need to learn the language. We need the right tools.
And the very first word in that language, the absolute starting point, is slope. We have to get our heads around this idea that the steepness of a line isn't just some random geometric feature. No, it's the engine of the story. It tells us how fast things are changing.
This all comes down to one key idea: rate of change. Honestly, just think of it as the pace of our story. Is the plot moving at a snail's pace? Is it a frantic, fast-moving thriller? Is it speeding up or slowing down? The rate of change tells us exactly that. It's the speedometer for our plot.
And what's cool about this slide is that it gives us the basic directions for our plot. If the line is going up, our story is building. Things are increasing. If it's going down, well, things are decreasing. And a flat, zero-slope line, that's a pause in the action. That's a moment of suspense where the story just holds its breath.
But, life isn't a straight line, is it? Real stories are rarely that simple. They've got twists and turns and all sorts of ups and downs. So how in the world do we measure the pace when the line itself is a curve?
I mean, take a look at gas prices. We've all lived this story. It goes up, then it comes down, then it shoots back up again. The rate of change is all over the place. It's a much more complex, chaotic story. And for this, a simple slope just isn't going to cut it. We need a new tool.
And that new tool is the average rate of change. And it's actually a brilliant little trick. We can't easily measure the speed at every single tiny moment on a curve, but what we can do is pick 2 points in time, draw a straight line between them, and find the average pace of the story in that window. It gives us the big picture trend.
And finding it is way simpler than it sounds. Remember this from school, rise over run? That's all it is. First, you figure out the vertical change. That's your rise. Then, you find the horizontal change. That's your run. And finally, you just divide the rise by the run. That's it. 3 simple steps.
All right, let's put this into practice. Let's try it out. Here we've got a graph of some function. We'll call it g of t. We want to know what was the average pace of this story between time equals -1 and time equals 2. So let's just follow our steps. At our second point, when time is 2, the output is 1. At our first point, when time was -1, the output was 4. So the change in our output, our rise, is 1 minus 4, which is -3. The change in our input, the run, is 2 minus -1, which gives us 3.
So what does that give us? We take the rise, -3, and we divide it by the run, which is 3, and we get -1. This means that on average, between those 2 moments in the story, the overall trend was heading downwards. For every step forward in time, the story went 1 step down. Okay, so now that we can measure the pace of the story, we can start to describe the actual plot. We can identify the parts of the story where things are going up, the rising action, and the parts where they're heading down, the falling action.
And the slide just illustrates it perfectly. These are the 2 fundamental movements of any plot. On the left, we've got the rising action, an increasing function, where the line is climbing up as we move from left to right. And on the right, you guessed it, we have the falling action, a decreasing function where the line is sliding down.
And it really is that simple. If the line is going up as you read it like a book, from left to right, the story is in a period of increase. If it's going down, the story is in a period of decrease. We can now officially describe the journey.
But let's be honest, where things get really exciting in any story are the moments where everything changes, the turning points. In a graph, these are the most dramatic and important moments of the entire narrative.
And that's the absolute perfect way to think about it. These turning points are the plot twists. They're those moments where a long period of success suddenly turns into a struggle, or when a long decline finally hits rock bottom and starts to turn around.
And you can see these plot twists in action right here. On the left, we've got a peak. The story was rising, it hits this incredible high point, and then it begins to fall.
On the right, we have a valley. The story was falling, it hits a low point, and then it begins its epic comeback.
Now, the official kind of fancy term for these plot twists is local extrema. The peaks are called local maxima, and the valleys are local minima. And they're called local because they are the highest or lowest points right there in their immediate neighborhood, but not necessarily for the entire story.
Which, of course, brings us to the grand finale. Because beyond all the local ups and downs, every story has an ultimate high and an ultimate low. That single moment of greatest triumph or deepest despair. And this slide just shows that concept perfectly. See how this graph has one single point that is higher than all the others? That's it. That's the absolute maximum. And another point that's lower than everything else. That's the absolute minimum. This is the story's final undisputed verdict. So the difference here is absolutely crucial. A story can have many local plot twists, lots of little peaks and valleys along the way. But it can only have one absolute highest point and one absolute lowest point over its entire duration.
And there you have it. Just like that, you now have a complete toolkit for reading the story of any graph. You can measure its pace, you can identify its rising and falling action, you can pinpoint the plot twists, and you can find the ultimate highs and lows. You can speak its language.
So from now on, when you see a stock chart, or a climate report, or some piece of economic data, don't just see a line. See the narrative. See the struggle, the triumph, the turning points. The world is absolutely full of these stories, hidden in plain sight. So the only question left is, what stories will you uncover now?